So if you are a business owner, connect with your community college, connect with the faculty running the programs in your industry. Ask how you can interact with students. Can you offer internships to some of their students in your company? Can you ask for a right of first interview or hire coming out of those programs? Can you support them with equipment or financially? Can you talk to students in those programs and faculty in those programs about the skills your industry will need in their employees in the coming years, the jobs of the future? And can you work with faculty to incorporate entrepreneurial thinking and things like problem solving and design thinking processes into the curriculum so that when students come out of those programs and you are able to hire them for your company, they are equipped with all of that. Community colleges love talking to business owners and community organizations in their local area, and they have 100 years of experience in tailoring their programs to serve local workforce and community needs.
What is one radical idea you believe could transform the approach to entrepreneurship education in community colleges? Just one.
One radical idea that could, this is the tough one because this is what I'm wrestling with too.
Welcome back. You guys, the listeners, are my powerhouse. So I have something I want to discuss with you guys today. But before we dive into today's episode, I want to shine a spotlight on an incredible opportunity that could revolutionize the way you approach your business. So now the question is, are you ready to take your business to the next level? Whether you're an entrepreneur, a leader, or a team member striving for excellence, I want to say Point of View Consulting in New York is your partner in strategic transformation. Whether you are in Texas or you are in whatever the city you are in, so far you're in the United States, they are helping businesses transform their business. So they are not just a consulting firm, they are your catalyst for change, a coaching powerhouse, and a branding leader, all rolled into one. At Point of View Consulting, their services includes strategic consulting, executive coaching, brand development, and performance optimization. And one interesting thing about this brand, Point of View Consulting, is right now they're offering an exclusive free consultation just for you. Now, this is your own chance to gain invaluable insight at no cost. Plus, when you decide to move forward with any services, just use the promo code Winner Circle Podcast to receive a hefty 30% discount on your services fee. It's simple. Imagine the transformation you could achieve with an expert guidance and a fresh perspective. So don't let this opportunity pass you by. I want you to visit www.pointofviewconsultinginc.com. So that is Point of View Consulting NC.com today to book your complimentary consultation and embark on a journey of growth and success. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, guys, welcome to the Winner Circle podcast today. I'm your host, Jay Adewale, and today we'll be diving into a critical conversation about entrepreneurship. And not just only entrepreneurship, we'll be talking about innovation in education, particularly within community colleges. Today, we are honored to have a person here who is Dr. Carrie B. Kisker with us, a distinguished leader in higher education and the president of Kisker Education Consulting. With our extensive research and visionary approach, Dr. Kisker has influenced community colleges, their practices and policies across the country. She currently runs the Center for the Study of Community Colleges, where she focuses on enhancing the role of these institutions in fostering civic engagement. Not only that, entrepreneurial thinking and also innovative practices. She's also the co-author of the American Community College and Creating Entrepreneurial Community Colleges, both of which highlight the significance of integrating entrepreneurial principles into educational frameworks. Today, we're going to explore how nurturing entrepreneurial mindset can not only boost student outcomes, but also drive institutional growth. So whether you're an educator, or you are a policymaker, or someone passionate about the future of higher education, bet you won't want to miss this enlightening conversation.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you today, Jay.
Same here. Good to have you on the show. So to start with, can you define what entrepreneurship means in the context of community colleges and why it is very essential?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. When I started thinking about this, I was receiving a lot of pushback from my colleagues working in higher education, especially in community colleges, because there was this false perception that there was a dichotomy between working in an entrepreneurial way or in an innovative ways and working for the public good, right? To serve students and to serve communities, which is really what community colleges do. So a lot of my work and research over the past decade or so has been in thinking about how we can perhaps reframe our preconceived notions about what entrepreneurship means, what innovation means, so that it can be in service of the public good, in service of the mission of these institutions. So, as you mentioned, I wrote a book several years ago called Creating Entrepreneurial Community Colleges, and the subtitle of that book is A Design Thinking Approach to Mission-Oriented Change. And so what I mean by that is design thinking is a fantastic tool for thinking entrepreneurially and in innovative ways. But when applied to public sector institutions like community colleges and like most of higher education, it can be, I think, really beneficially used as a framework for keeping the needs of the institution, the mission of the institution, and the needs of its stakeholders, in particular students and the communities that benefit from the institutions, at the heart of all innovation. So to me, I put forth in the book, and I do a lot of consulting directly with community college leaders, faculty, trustees, and others around this idea of design thinking for mission-oriented change. So starting from the standpoint of what are the needs of the students and the community members and the businesses that rely on trained workers and faculty and other stakeholders, and designing with those needs in mind, which then ensure that you are not working at cross purposes to the mission of the institution, and in particular, the public good mission of the institution. But really, all of your innovation is geared toward enhancing that and preserving that.
To follow up with what you said, so why do you believe in that instance itself that fostering entrepreneurial thinking is particularly important for community college students?
Yeah, I'll answer that in two parts. When I started thinking about this, there were two real reasons that got me thinking about this. The first is that since, really the late 20th century, and it has only increased, states and localities have disinvested in public institutions of higher education. And what I mean by that is not, if you look just at, so the number of dollars from states and localities to public higher education, those numbers have gone up. But what's gone up even more are the number of students attending those institutions. So if you look at per student allocations to community colleges and other public institutions, you see that states have disinvested. I think I have a statistic in my book that between 2001 and 2017, the per student allocation at community colleges across the United States had dropped by over $2,000. So that means that community colleges and other public institutions are having to do more with less. So that in itself is an argument for adopting an entrepreneurial approach to thinking about what we do as institutions. The second reason that drew me to thinking about this is community colleges, and I would argue probably most institutions of higher education in America, are set up in ways to replicate what they have done before. And they are very good at it. America has today, I would still argue, really the top tier system of higher education in the world. And we can talk about why that is if you like, but it's not developed and it is not built in a way to innovate easily. It's, all the analogies of turning a large ship into the wind or herding cats or whatever analogies may be applied are all there. So if we're going to break the cycle of simply adding on to what we've already done and thinking in innovative new ways, we have to sort of change that paradigm a little bit. And then the second answer to that, I would say too, is, the past 4 or 5 months, we've been in this period as a nation where those of us who have been advocates for entrepreneurship and innovation are cringing a little bit right now, watching what's happening in our federal government, because that move that fast, break things mentality that at many times is at the core of thinking entrepreneurially has been allowed to run rampant through government spending and programs and other stuff like that, to real detrimental effects in all kinds of areas, including in particular within higher education. And so it becomes a little bit of a hard time to argue for innovation and for thinking about new ways of accomplishing our objectives, right? Because we have this example, along with many others, frankly, of how innovation and entrepreneurship can be done poorly to real detrimental effects on people's lives. But I would argue that, maybe it's possible that my approach to innovation in community colleges should be applied to Doge and to other aspects of that's going on right now, to think about what are the needs of an agency, a government agency, or what are the needs that a grant program is serving. Just in the way that we think about what are the needs of a community college, what are the needs of students at a university, and innovate toward those needs, innovate new ways of serving those stakeholders, as opposed to thinking, innovation could be done terribly, right? Like it can, if we don't keep the needs of our stakeholders in mind, we can see really deleterious effects. But when we have this mission-driven approach, I think it sort of ensures that we are always working toward the aim of enhancing the mission of our agencies, of our institutions, and so forth.
All right, thank you so much. Can you discuss any federal or state level policies that have negatively... Hey, winners, as we continue our journey together today, I want to share something truly special with you. Over the years, I've had the privilege of coaching countless business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, guiding them to achieve breakthrough results and unlocking their full potential. So I'm opening up just 4 slots for my monthly business coaching program. That's right, 4 slots. After being fully booked for the past 3 years, if you're ready to elevate your business with personalized guidance, proven strategy, and a supportive community, I'm here to help you navigate challenges, refine your vision, and achieve your goals. So if you're committed to taking your business to the next level, I want to hear from you. Reach out to me directly at jay@winnercirclewithj.com and discuss how we can work together to build the future your business deserves. So don't wait. This is your moment. Join Winner Circle and let's embark on this transformative journey towards success together. And now let's dive back into today's episode, imparted entrepreneurship initiatives in community colleges. And if there's any positive ones too, I would love you to also share.
That some of these state and government policies in the past few months have negatively impacted entrepreneurial processes or innovative processes at community colleges or other institutions. I think there have been a number of really, really horrible unintended side effects of a lot of both state and government policies in the past 3 months, and frankly, in the past 5-10 years as well. In particular, when you're looking at a lot of the work, whether it's through executive order or state legislative bills and laws to outlaw what we sort of talk about as DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Those harm not only the top level institutions that I think they are aimed at, the most selective, the most elite institutions in our country. I actually argue that they have way more downstream effects on institutions like community colleges that serve the most vulnerable and marginalized populations in our society. Now, I will say, and I am not a supporter of most of these policies, right? But I will say that it is tempting when any of us feel under attack, or we feel like our rights or our abilities are being taken away from us, or we're being prevented from doing what we think is important. When we feel under attack, there's this tendency to circle the wagons, right? And to try to protect things as they have always been and as we have been practicing them for a long time. And I see that happening in higher education right now because we do feel under threat. We feel like the way that we are working to support students along their educational journeys is being hindered and hampered by a lot of these policies. But I would also argue, and maybe this gets to the point of your question, Jay, that when we feel under attack and when we are worried that a way we've always done things is going to be prevented going forward, I think that is actually the time to really try to embrace an entrepreneurial mindset, right? And in doing so with the mission in mind and with the needs of our stakeholders in mind. But I think if you can see the opportunity in the moment to, yes, protect our fundamental values, but also take advantage of this moment to think about new ways of accomplishing what we feel is important for students and communities, that there may well be an opportunity in there. And frankly, with all of the funding of many of these programs getting sliced daily, there are new articles about programs being cut. I think we're going to have to do this as a sector. I don't think there's a way to weather this and continue to serve students in the way that we've been able to in the past.
What are some of the key components of an entrepreneurial mindset that you think should be emphasized in community college, the curriculums?
Yeah, thank you. And I like the way you phrased that question because it makes clear that you don't have to be starting a company to think in an entrepreneurial way, right? It's essentially just a new way of interacting with humans and systems that can be potentially more innovative. So some of the key components to me, anyone familiar with the design thinking process knows the huge emphasis on empathy, right? Empathy for the students we're serving, empathy for the communities in which we're located, empathy for the needs of local businesses who are trying to develop their workforce, empathy for the faculty and staff and others working in the institutions. I think that is critical, and that can be implemented in the classroom, in the boardroom, across the board. Creativity and support for and encouragement for thinking in a divergent manner, right? When we are creating an entrepreneurial culture on our campuses, we are supporting everybody from the maintenance staff to our professors to the CEOs to think about new, different, potentially divergent ways of accomplishing our goals. Risk taking is a big thing of that. And again, that could be done well or poorly, as we've seen in some high profile ways in the past few months. But you have to take risks to innovate, right? Do the safe, iterative, or I would say adjunctive approach where we're just going to tweak a little bit at the edges. You're never going to lead to any big breakthroughs in that way. And then finally, in higher education, so often our work is done in silos. The faculty are teaching and designing the curriculum. The administrators are making the financial, budgetary, organizational decisions, thinking about supporting students and so on. The workforce development people are interacting with local companies and so forth. And when we can break through those silos and collaborate and think about how we can share both governance but teaching and learning responsibilities across the institution, then I think we lead to some really interesting new ways of connecting students with local work opportunities and experiences while they are learning, perhaps, or in a humanities class, right? Or thinking about civic engagement and opportunities for doing that in a more workforce-oriented program. There are all kinds of ideas for faculty and staff and students to come together and really connect ideas that will lead to more transformative learning, and I would argue more economic sustainability for community colleges as well, or for the communities in which they're located.
So why do you believe fostering entrepreneurial thinking is particularly important for community colleges? I mean, the students.
Yeah, so I think it's really important for students because we're living in a time where the jobs that exist today for which students are being trained today may not exist in 5 or 10 years, right? So you can go into a welding program and maybe there's a welder, but who knows? Maybe we're going to have machines that do that better and there's no need for welders now. In the same way as maybe we're learning more general education, liberal arts areas to go into law or medicine or whatever else, But those industries are also changing, and the way in which we, as workers in those industries, will interact in the future are changing. And so learning to think in an entrepreneurial and innovative manner, in my mind, is closely connected to sort of those 21st that are so important, not only in teaching students how to think, which should be the goal of higher education, not what to think, but how to think. But those are also the skills that employers are telling us not only that they need in workers, but that they're not getting in a lot of cases in college graduates, right? So how to work with and come to understandings with people whose backgrounds and experiences and perhaps political views are different than yours. That is a way of utilizing an entrepreneurial mindset that translates directly to the workforce, right? How to collaborate, how to think critically, how to question your assumptions and refine those and not be so afraid of having a bad idea or having an idea fail that you give up, but that you take what you've learned from that and apply it to the next problem you're trying to solve. All of those skills are directly transferable. And if we're thinking about teaching students to work and to think in that manner, sure, it's going to absolutely set them up if they do leave your institution and want to go work in an entrepreneurial way, start a company and do all that, they will have those skills. If they don't, if they go on to further education, if they take a job, if they even working in their communities and with their families, they also have the skills to be better citizens and to be better community members and to be better workers in whatever job they have, whether that's requires a PhD or a medical degree or whether that's an associate degree coming out of community college.
I want to say thank you to everyone joining us on live right now. It's been a great show. I have Dr. Carrie B. Kisker over here today, and she's been talking about entrepreneurship and innovation in education. I know there are a number of projects or programs that you've initiated in the community college, especially in the community college education. Can you name anyone that you've introduced or integrated into the community college? Can you name anyone?
Sure. I don't actually typically work to develop new programs. My consulting work is more aimed at introducing a framework and guiding groups of faculty and college leaders through the process to develop a program that they believe is important to institute at their institutions. So I work a lot with community colleges. I help facilitate strategic planning processes where I'm not coming in and saying, I think you should implement these programs or your focus of your institution should go in this direction and that direction. I believe that is up to the faculty and the administrators of the institution. But what I can do is come in and say, let me give you a process for starting with empathizing with the needs of your community and your students and your faculty and staff and others. And then let's move on to ideating how you can better meet those needs. And then let's test some of those assumptions. So typically what I bring is a process, and it can be applied to all kinds of things. I have done it in terms of overall institutional strategic planning. We have pointed that at student success and progress and success outcomes in terms of educational attainment and persistence and so forth. So I sort of introduce a process. Let's look at our data. These are where our students are succeeding and where they're falling short. And are we seeing patterns in those data? And given all the knowledge that we have now collected, how can we think about bringing in new approaches to serving these students and supporting their educational journeys? A lot of times we spend an enormous amount of time on the front end of the design thinking process, really. So understanding what are the data telling us, which students are struggling and where, which courses are acting as bottlenecks. And then I leave it typically with some guidance to the faculty and staff at each institution to identify the best way they know how. And, the vast majority of faculty and staff working at community colleges are really aware of some of the programs that have shown the most efficacy for doing these types of things over the past couple of years. And I'll mention just the approach that colleges take to supporting students who arrive at college underprepared for college level work. In decades past, we have asked these underprepared students to go through sometimes years of developmental education courses before we allow them to enroll in a first college level English or math course and start earning college credits, right? So they are paying to attend the institution to get to the point where they can start earning credits. And what we know is historically, most students have fallen out of the pipeline at that point, right? They've just gotten so discouraged that they're paying to go to college without being able to earn college credits yet. That it hasn't worked. So, led largely by a bunch of fantastic research out of the Community College Research Center at Teachers College at Columbia, many, many institutions have started implementing what we call co-requisite developmental education, which is these sort of sidecar type support classes that are attached to a college level English or math course, in which students who are a little bit underprepared get the support they need to pass that gateway course within their first year. I do a lot of work with the Arizona community colleges, and I've just looked at for the past year the success rates in co-requisite developmental education courses, and they are 10 to 20 points higher than we had seen in the prerequisite model. And those students are passing the gateway courses in the first year instead of over 6 years. So that 10 to 20 percentage points is success in 1 year compared to success in 6 years. And so those types of really innovative, research-driven approaches to improving education are awesome. And I write about a lot of those. I've tried to summarize a lot of those new approaches in my book, The American Community College. But my consulting work, where I focus the entrepreneurial and innovative strategies, is never telling a college what to do. It's providing them with a process for how they might accomplish that.
Thank you for clarifying that. And that's what challenges do you think they face when implementing this entrepreneurship and innovation initiatives? And number two, you also talked about the faculty and staff. So how can faculty and staff be supported to cultivate an entrepreneurial environment within colleges? Because I believe they need a lot of support. So I would love you to
you're
address those two
absolutely right.
questions.
Yeah, and those, in my mind, those two questions are really closely related, right? Because I think the biggest challenge, whether you're in higher education or any industry, when you are trying to think collectively, like in a group of people in a more entrepreneurial or innovative way, is that many of us, probably all of us at some point, can get stuck in thinking about things from our perspective only, right? So if I'm a faculty member, I'm always considering, okay, this might be a great idea, but what does it mean for me? Because I am already overworked and underpaid, and the numbers of full-time faculty on community college campuses have decreased so much in comparison to part-timers for budgetary and other reasons. But that means that those full-timers are often asked to take on so much more invisible, unpaid labor. And so they have a lot of initiative fatigue, right? There's a lot of emotional work attached to what they're asked to do that's sort of invisible to administrators and to others. And so one of the biggest challenges that we've seen is that there can often be a lot of resistance from faculty to doing this because and rightly so, I think they feel that this is yet another thing that they are being asked to do, right? With the same paycheck, with the same course load. And I think that's legitimate. And I write about that a lot in my book, Creating Entrepreneurial Colleges, that we need to acknowledge that and acknowledge that it's a real problem and then work together to find ways to overcome it. And so that's one major challenge. And to get to your second question, Jay, I think college leaders and any leaders who are working to instill in any industry, instill a more entrepreneurial mindset, really have to think hard about the culture that they are creating to do that, right? You cannot just go tell faculty and staff, be more innovative. I want to see new ways of doing this, shake things up, show me different results, without encouraging that sort of divergent thinking and risk taking and failing, really. I mean, I think we have to celebrate, and it's a really hard thing to do in something that feels so high stakes like education, or frankly, any company that profits may be on the line. But I write about in the book some of the most successful presidents and other college leaders I've seen in this regard have not only provided processes to support innovative thinking, but they have held up examples of where faculty and others have attempted to do so and it hasn't worked out perfectly, now, especially maybe the first or second time, and said, this is fantastic. the first attempt did not produce the results we were hoping for, but look at what we learned and look at how that's leading to the second attempt and how we're going to tweak things, and to celebrate what is easy to think about as a failure as really a successful first step toward accomplishing an idea. So I think that's a huge part of creating the culture. The other challenge that also speaks to what college leaders need to do to create this type of entrepreneurial thinking in their institutions lends itself to the organizational and the structural and the policies, maybe budgetary policies even, that frame how the institution works, right? Like each institution has a slightly different version of how their budget process works, how they give money to various departments and to various student services and so forth. And until and unless college leaders are also ready to say, perhaps we need to apply this same entrepreneurial lens to our existing processes and organizational structures, we're only going to be tinkering around the edges, right? So we also have to think about looking internally. How can we think innovatively about improving our internal structures and processes, not just our outcomes for students or how we're interacting with the community or how we might be generating revenue from new sources? Because at the end of the day, those structures and processes and allocation patterns within an institution can either support an innovative mindset or they can hinder it. And I'm sure that's the same, I'd be curious if that matches your experience and in being an entrepreneur and starting companies too, that if you don't look inside yourself at your own processes, there's sort of a ceiling on what you can accomplish.
What advice would you give to, community college leaders who are a little bit hesitant to embrace an entrepreneurial focus?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have yet to meet a college leader, C-suite CEO type who is not interested in the idea of thinking more entrepreneurially and introducing more innovative processes to their institution. I have met a lot of very interested, innovative college leaders who don't know how to do that, right? So it's that there's interest. And I think for the most part, our college leaders today know that there's a need for that and are supportive of that, in theory. And when it comes down to what they might need to do and enact in their institutions to create that culture where that can happen, they're a little lost. And I don't blame them. This is a new skill, a new way of thinking. We all have to learn this. And it's for most of us, maybe you're the exception, Jay, but for most of us, this is not our skill set. I didn't go to school for entrepreneurship. I went to school for education, as did most people who work in and teach in our institutions. So we're having to learn a new way of thinking and then apply it to our discipline or apply it to our sector. And that's uncomfortable for a lot of people, right? It feels out of our skill set. It feels dangerous. We may fail. And for college leaders, failing is a big deal. They could get a no vote of confidence from their faculty. The board of trustees to whom they report could say, sorry, we're out, we're not renewing your contract. So it feels very high stakes for college leaders who may have an interest and know there's a need to work in this way, but don't know how to do it. And there's a lot of fear about that. So that's mainly what I encounter. I have found, I'm not sure I've ever met a college president who is not sort of drawn to this way of thinking. It's the how that they're going to get there is the question. I have met trustees who are uncomfortable with the idea of change. Not many. I would say the vast majority of community college trustees are really supportive of, sort of strategic change and innovation proposals, but some are really protective. And I understand that, right? I mean, we all, as I said, 20 minutes ago, our system of higher education in America is widely seen as the best in the world for a number of reasons. And there are a lot of things in that have made our system what it is that we need to protect and we need to preserve. And that shouldn't be seen in opposition to adopting an entrepreneurial mindset, because I think the two can work in tandem to enhance the quality of our system.
The past 10 years, have you seen a shift in cultural perceptions, around entrepreneurship within community colleges?
Yeah, No, I think there's much more of a willingness to embrace entrepreneurship and an innovative way of thinking about things. And part of that, as I said earlier, is because we have to. We haven't been able to rely on the same funding streams from states and through property taxes and other avenues that we've seen in the past. And the costs have gotten higher, right? The costs of supporting students through their educational journeys have just fundamentally increased. And we want to do that well, right? It's not, educators are very uncomfortable saying, yeah, we'll support some students, but we don't need to support all of them. It's an antithetical to how we see our mission. So because of that, I think there has been a much more broadly embraced way of thinking about this. There are all kinds of really good groups. I would say premier among those is the National Association of Community College Entrepreneurship, which is growing in institutional members every year and puts on really fantastic conferences and webinars and other opportunities for professional development about how both administrators can think about entrepreneurship at an institutional level, but how faculty can think about introducing an entrepreneurial mindset or innovative thinking in their classrooms and so forth. So yes, I think we've really seen this be embraced, and I hope that continues. I suspect it will.
It sure will. I know that it's also very important for not just the colleges or the leadership to carry on the mantle. The student also should be able to be the agent of change in their campuses. I'm just going to ask a question in regards to that. How can students themselves take that initiative to foster an entrepreneurial spirit on their campuses? What strategy do you think they can take?
That's a good question. I haven't thought a lot about that, but I think there's a lot of room for students to start or join, if they already exist, clubs. Extracurricular organizations that focus on entrepreneurship or innovation. I think in a lot of schools of business or business programs within community colleges, there is a lot of that. There are students who are drawn to doing that. I think students can ask their professors, this is great, this biology class is great, but I'm ultimately interested in thinking in a more entrepreneurial way. How can we introduce some of these concepts around entrepreneurial thinking into our biology class or our math class? And I would argue that you could do that in any discipline, right? Like there are really easy ways to do that. I talk to faculty a lot. Actually, I've learned from a lot of faculty about how they have introduced sort of student identity based projects into all kinds of classes, biology, math, everything else. Which allows the student to connect who they are personally to the subject and the discipline and the material they're learning. And I think in the way that they have done that, there are also opportunities to think about providing students with skills for empathizing, right, with the needs of others or the perspectives of others, failing fast and iterating, your problem solving. All of those things can be introduced and practiced in the classroom, and that doesn't need to all be on faculty to figure out how to do that. I think students can come to their professors and say, and especially at community colleges where students have such close opportunities to connect with and create relationships with their professors. That's something you can ask for students. I mean, you have a whole lot of agency as a college student, as a community college student, to go in and say, this is how I learn best, or this is how I want to learn, and this is what I want to do to apply my learning down the road. Can you help me do that? And I would think that you might be surprised by how receptive faculty will be to those types of questions.
So, but what skills do you believe are crucial for students to acquire in order to succeed as an entrepreneur? And how can the community college itself effectively teach these skills in the school?
Yeah, I would say if I had to choose one skill that is crucial to both, I believe, success as an entrepreneur and success as a citizen and a contributing member of our society, it would be to try to detach your judgment of yourself and your emotions about your success or lack thereof from the result of any particular attempt to do something, right? And what I mean by that is if we try something and we fail, or we don't get the results we see, or we feel like we didn't do a very good job, there's a tendency to judge ourselves really harshly and say, well, maybe I'm not cut out for math, or maybe I'm not cut out to start a company or develop this idea or this product. And instead, the cardinal rule, I think, of thinking entrepreneurially is that that's not a failure. That is a first step towards success. And in order to make that shift emotionally and in our minds, we have to really suspend judgment which is a whole lot easier to suspend judgment of others' perceived failures than it is to suspend judgment of our own. And so I have teenagers right now who get really down on themselves when they don't do well on a test or they get a bad grade on something. And I remind them that that's not the purpose of this assignment. The purpose of this assignment is to lead to more learning. And you probably are learning more from the essay where you got a B- because you didn't do X, Y, and Z that you can apply toward the next essay or the next product or the next idea than you would if you got it right on the first time. So I would say that would be my number one piece of advice for students and for faculty supporting them, is to remind them constantly to not judge themselves too harshly when they take a first step towards something, because that first step is likely not going to be great, and it shouldn't be great because it's a first step.
So just like what we used to say at the winner circle, we always say it's okay to fail forward. Don't feel backward and run away. Fail forward.
That's
Each
right.
time you fail, try to learn from the failure and move forward. Just make sure you're moving forward. Don't go back, just move forward. Failure is understandable. And that's a very radical idea. Talking about radical, what is one radical idea you believe could transform the approach to entrepreneurship education in community colleges? Just one.
One radical idea that this is the tough one because this is what I'm wrestling with too, is how can we protect and preserve the fundamental values and the fundamental pillars that undergird our system and that enable us to serve students and communities as we do, and change how we're doing what we do, right? So can we stay true to our values and change the way in which we're doing our jobs or accomplishing our objectives? And it feels like those things are so tightly coupled that is hard to do. And I don't have an answer to this, which is perhaps why I feel like it's radical, because I am also struggling with it. Part of my job, as I define it, is really advocating for our institutions and advocating for the aspects of our system of higher education that have made it so great for 400 years or so. And we can do better. We are imperfect people working in imperfect institutions within an imperfect system. And there are all kinds of opportunities to innovate how we accomplish our mission and how we serve students and communities. And decoupling those two things is really difficult. But if we can do that, if we can find a way to innovate and protect and preserve the things that have made us successful in the past and just change how we're accomplishing that, then I think we can really start cooking with gas, right? I mean, it's a really exciting idea that seems maybe obvious to some, but in practice is really, really hard to do, in part because there's such an emotional connection to what we've always done too, right? And the importance of what we've always done.
Thank you so much. That's so radical, but not just radical, it's visionary. I believe it's gonna change the future of entrepreneurship in colleges if it's being implemented. Are there any resources or tools that you would recommend for community colleges looking to enhance their entrepreneurial education, and also for students who also want to focus more on entrepreneurship?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the self-promoting resources. I don't know if you can see it. My book, Creating Entrepreneurial Colleges, Community Colleges, I think can give everybody a really firm understanding of the process. And some colleges take the book and are like, we get it. We understand how to do this. We're off and running. Other colleges have said, and I've had institutions who actually, some of my favorite, have purchased the book for their trustees and for their faculty leaders and said, read this, and then we're bringing Carrie in to help guide us on the process. And I think that has been so useful because then I don't have to spend a lot of time talking about what the process is and what it could mean for the institution. We can get right back down to work. So I would really encourage anyone who is interested in mission-driven entrepreneurship in community colleges and in higher education to pick up that book. It's on Amazon. It's everywhere. It's pretty cheap. The second resource I would say, particularly for community colleges, is look into joining or interacting in some way with NACCE, which is the National Association for Community College Entrepreneurship. That is the huge association of community college leaders and faculty who are all dedicated to this idea and all working in communities of practice to look at everything from entrepreneurship education to creating an entrepreneurial mindset at an institutional level. And so those would be two resources that I would say off the top of my head. And there are all kinds of resources out there about design thinking. But if you work in a public or social sector organization, whether that's government or institution of higher education, think about how design thinking can be applied in your type of institution, right? Because there are fundamentally different stakeholders when you are in a public or social sector institution rather than when you are running a for-profit company. So the mission-driven or the design thinking approach to mission-oriented change that I outline in my book, I actually stole some of the framework with attribution from business professors at Columbia University who talk about design thinking for public and social sector organizations. And then I fine-tuned that a little bit more to community colleges. But I would send people to that resource as well, because I think when you have stakeholders who aren't just clients, right, then you have to think differently about your outcomes and your needs.
All right. Thank you so much for the recommendation. And I want the listeners to make sure they get those resources to learn more about this topic. And hopefully we'll bring back Dr. Carrie.
Anytime.
Trust me, winners, you're going to hear more from Dr. Carrie on this show. So, finally, Dr. Kisker, what is one key takeaway you would like our listeners to remember about the importance of entrepreneurship in community colleges?
Yeah, I think just that entrepreneurship doesn't always have to mean the skills to start a company. We can all think in an entrepreneurial way whenever we have a problem that we're trying to solve or a process we're trying to implement. And I think the skills that entrepreneurs have in learning to have an entrepreneurial mindset, in being creative, thinking, asking what if, failing forward, as you said before, Jay, iterative problem solving can be applied to any situation, whether you're teaching a class in a community college, whether you're starting a business, whether you have some really difficult conversations that need to be had with family members. Can we think about empathizing with their needs and drilling down into maybe the values we share in order to preserve those relationships and disagree around certain things? I just think that people hear the word entrepreneurship and they think it only means starting a company. And I would argue that it is so much broader than that and can be applied in so many different circumstances.
As we wrap up today's episode, I want to take a moment to reflect on the invaluable insights we've gained about this entrepreneurship and innovation in education topic, especially in context of community colleges, and that's what we discussed about. And hearing from you, Dr. Gray, it has deepened my understanding and even my listeners' understanding. I understand how essential it is for, you know, institutions, community colleges, higher education to embrace an entrepreneurial mindset. We explored how fostering creativity, adaptability, and problem-solving skills can profoundly impact student outcomes, which
That's
is
right.
very key. The importance of collaboration between faculties, businesses, and even students. As a country, empowering them with the skills and knowledge to even thrive to thrive in every aspect of life. Even right now, we have like a ever evolving job market where the job market is moving. It's on the
Mm-hmm.
move, right? Things are different. The way a particular job description is maybe 5 years ago is no longer the way it is right now.
That's right.
Because now there's the need for technology. I was going to even talk about that. So we have technology, we have AI. So now, if you're a content creator or content writer, the way you're going to deal with content right now is different from the way you're going to do it 10 years ago. You might really not need some tools to do it, but now there are a lot of tools that makes your job even easier and also become more creative, but you still have to put your own creativity in it.
That's right.
So I just want to say thank you for joining us today. As we explored the vital topic, I want to say you left us feeling inspired to think about how we can contribute to fostering innovation in education. But now the question I want to just quickly ask is how can we partner with colleges to initiate, you know, innovations and to make entrepreneurship, to promote entrepreneurship in colleges? How do you think we can do that before we go?
That's a great question. And I would say, first of all, higher education is in what is potentially an existential crisis right now. So the first thing all of us can do is stand up for the institutions that we attended, the institutions that our neighbors attend, that our children may attend, the institutions that our employees have attended or are currently attending, and say, no, we need to support them. And in particular, I would argue community colleges that will bear the brunt of the terrible outcomes of a lot of the more recent state and federal policies attacking higher education, simply because they do it with the least amount of money and serve the most marginalized students. So all of us can stand up for supporting higher education, workforce training, and higher learning. The second thing we can do, especially your audience as entrepreneurs, everybody lives near a community college, right? There are roughly 1,000 community colleges, and they are within commuting distance of almost every single American, right? So if you are a business owner, connect with your community college, connect with the faculty running the programs in your industry, ask how you can interact with students. Can you offer internships to some of their students in your company? Can you ask for a right of first interview or hire coming out of those programs? Can you support them with equipment or financially? Can you talk to students in those programs and faculty in those programs about the skills your industry will need in their employees in the coming years, the jobs of the future? And can you work with faculty to incorporate entrepreneurial thinking and things like problem solving and design thinking processes into the curriculum, so that when students come out of those programs and you are able to hire them for your company, they are equipped with all of that. Community colleges love talking to business owners and community organizations in their local area, and they have 100 years of experience in tailoring their programs to serve local workforce and community needs. And they can come to you. They should also come to you, but you don't need to wait for that to happen, because we all know how overstretched they are. So go call up your local community college president, call up the faculty member heading the department in the industry and then you work, and offer your services. Can I come in and talk to your class? Can I ask how you are, encouraging an entrepreneurial mindset throughout your program? Can I interview your graduates? There are all kinds of things to do here to tighten the connection between the work that you are doing, maybe as a small business owner or somebody working in a large company, to ensure that not only you are benefiting from this fantastic entrepreneurial education that community college students are getting or can get, but also that you are helping to share your experience as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, and contributing to that learning process as well.
Right. Thank you so much. And like I said, I can have this show going for the next 5 hours, and I think there's still a lot of things. I was about to round up, and I still remember that, I still have one question to ask, and which is very important. So my take for today is, if you're a business owner, just try as much as possible, reach out to community college around you and see how you can be of help and help the colleges. Just like internship, it's a great thing to, just think about it. And you can also reach out to Dr. Carrie,
Please.
and if you have one or two questions, especially about this topic, and she'll be more than willing to help if you say you're from the winner circle. So till next time, thank you guys. Have a nice day, guys. See you in the winner circle.